Here we go. Director, I'm so glad to be with you. You want to take a seat on the far end? Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Have a seat. Have a seat, Director. So, very good. I'm glad to sit down here for a bit. That'll be good. Exciting to be here with the Director of the ONCD and the White House. Harry brings an incredible journey, just an incredible journey. And I don't want to spill the beans, because I would love to hear in his words describing how he arrived here today. And Director.
I took 95 down from Baltimore.
That's good.
It seemed almost as long, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's quite the journey.
But my journey, if I were to describe it in just a couple of words, service and leadership. Both of my parents were public servants. My father was in the military. When he retired, he became an educator, as was my mother. So that instilled in me early on a sense of service, the opportunity to make things better for others. So I'm pleased that stuck with me and has guided my career choices from the outset. But the key points for me, I was fortunate enough to attend the United States Naval Academy. And all right, good. And in addition to that being just an exceptional leadership school, a key point for me was I was the class of 1980. So I started in 1976. I know not many people were around then. But the key thing about that was the first class that women were allowed to attend the service academies in this great nation of ours. It took that long for us to allow. It took too long, but we got it right eventually. So there are lessons there. But we got it right. And I defy anyone to tell me that our nation is not better and stronger because of that decision. So I say that whenever I speak because I'm more and more proud of that class and that opportunity and that institution in this country because we got it right. But that did instill in me a sense of awareness of opportunities that we should all have. So I was grateful for that. Then I did go out into the fleet, served 20 years in the Navy. First couple of assignments at sea. Again, leadership opportunities, a young, fresh graduate leading people that were more experienced, more knowledgeable, stronger in their technical acumen that taught me some leadership lessons there. And then a transition from being operational to engineering duty, and that kind of got me on the path to where I am now, working primarily with space systems. And my last active duty assignment was out at the National Reconnaissance Office where we build surveillance systems, overhead surveillance systems. And I learned then that the vast majority of civilians at NRO were CIA. Yeah. And I figured if I enjoyed what I was doing in uniform, I'd enjoy it in coat and tie. And I tell you, I blinked and 20 years went by like that. So just fabulous time serving in the CIA. And in my 20 years with CIA, I was able to do multiple tours with NSA, which was great to see those professionals up close and personal on a daily basis. It gave me even more of a sense of pride and comfort knowing that we had those types of folks working in the intelligence community. And then, the last part on my journey to this position, relationships were key. I made some strong relationships based on trust, as most good relationships are based on. And some folks thought I could make an additional contribution to the country, and so they brought me in as the second National Senate confirmed National Cyber Director. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Pretty amazing journey. No, that's amazing. So if you look back over that journey and think about what sort of experiences that shaped to what you now need to do in your current job as the head of ONCD? Is there anything that stands out there?
Yeah, a couple of things, the positive lessons and negative lessons. But
all right.
On one, I don't think anybody in this audience was around when we made the transition from manual typewriters to electric typewriters.
All right.
I did not want to have anything to do with an electric typewriter.
Oh.
I resisted it. That thing is different. No, I'm fine just the way I am, doing 23 words a minute with 2 fingers. And so I look back on my reluctance to evolve with technology, and it gives me empathy with others today and yesterday and the day before and going in the future. That reluctance. So that keeps me
That's a good one.
Keeps me close on that. Another key moment was I went to graduate school. Navy sent me to graduate school out in Monterey, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. One of my mentors said, "Hey, this thing called computer science, it's coming down the pike. You ought to do computer science." And so me as a young officer saluted and said, off I go into computer science.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I am too. But I tell you, I was there in Monterey in graduate school, and one of the first courses was computer architecture. I thought that was how to design a house, and so that was just it was tough for me, but it was good for me. So I did that and benefited from it. But when I came out of computer science, the Navy decided to send me to the Navy Space Systems Division out at the Pentagon. And I had never operated in space systems. And I remember telling a buddy of mine where I was going, and he said, "I bet you can't even spell satellite." And I had to ponder how many T's, how many L's, and what order. He was accurate.
Yeah.
But when I got to the Pentagon, I had a boss there, a great boss. And I told him about my apprehension about working space systems, and turns out that boss had also been a graduate, the Naval Postgraduate School in computer science. And he said, "Hey, Coker, just think of satellites as a computer in the sky." And that simplified it for me. And I still think about that today, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. So that was instrumental in helping me move forward and getting me into cybersecurity.
It's a great story. That's good. Maybe we'll come back to that, actually. That's good. So with that, what's pretty incredible with that journey, I think, is that you've been probably consuming intelligence, you've produced intelligence, probably collected, not just probably, you've collected intelligence, you've probably done every aspect of intelligence there is. And so I have this favorite question that I love to ask people of this sort of pedigree, is to say, what does great intelligence look like?
Okay. Great intelligence, a number of attributes. So I have to use this little saying. So attack needs to be accessible, needs to be timely, needs to be actionable, and it needs to be of consequence. So accessible. I've worked with some great agencies that collect some great intelligence, we call exquisite systems. But literally, there have been times where our teams that have the same clearance, but they couldn't have access to the information because of some folks' sense of needing to protect that intelligence. So it doesn't do much good if it's not accessible. The right people need to be able to have access to it, and timely. Need to get it there at the right moment. There's some intelligence that can be strategic and that can be relevant for a longer time. A lot of intelligence is more tactically focused and needs to get to the right folks in a hurry. And actionable. You could distinguish between intelligence and information. intelligence needs to be something that we need to take action on, and then needs to be of consequence. You know, what's the import of it? Does it matter, or is it, where'd those newspapers go? Or is it something you just want to pick up and read and go, interesting?
Yeah.
So it needs to be accessible, timely, actionable, and of consequence. And I'll offer in there one of the unique uses of intelligence that a team I was on had the opportunity to leverage. We had access to an exquisite source of intelligence, but we also knew that that was not going to be around in perpetuity due to nothing that we could control. But we were able to tell the leadership that, number one, this is not going to be around forever. Number two, we can't do anything about it. But number three, we can tell you when it's going to go away by watching these indicators. And frequently, when a team loses access to an exquisite source of intelligence, it's not a good day.
No.
You know, what the heck happened? How'd you let this happen? On and on and on. But we used that actionable intelligence in a timely and consequential manner to let the leadership team know if A, B, and C happen, we got 90 days and it's over. And to their credit, the leadership took that in stride because we told them it was going to happen. So that's
you delivered intelligence on the intelligence,
yes,
which is good.
Yep. Another way, just having insights to people on the other side of the table, what they're thinking about, and preparing leadership for negotiations has been beneficial. So it's not always tactical in a traditional adversary type of way. It could be tactical and strategic with negotiations. That was a good experience as well, being able to prepare policymakers.
And do you think this have changed in any way now that we think about this fast-paced? It feels like we live in a very fast-paced world. I think we do, but like sometimes maybe we move too fast for our own good. But it does feel like that. And then likewise with cyber, do you think has this changed in some ways there, or is this completely still holds? Or
I agree. We're in a fast-paced world, and I think primarily because of technology and cyber, and part of that technology includes AI. Things are happening more rapidly. So in some sense, the decision timelines have shortened, but not all of them. No. For example, negotiations. No. I don't know that those timelines have shortened, but there's so much more information that's available, and not all of it's relevant. Yeah. And that kind of clouds things as well. A lot of us like to know a lot of stuff, but how much of it is relevant and necessary to the actions that need to be taken? So that decision loop, that decision space is still there and needs to be worked.
Which is probably a good reminder to all of us that it's sometimes running fast is not necessarily getting us any faster to where we need to be. So no, it's good. Now, and one final point on your experience here is running the open source center or enterprise. I guess it's the new name here. So obviously, Recorded Future and others, and many of you here, some of you live in the special world here, but most of you live in a world of what we'd call open source intelligence. And do you think this changes in the world when it comes to open source? Is it a different thing to produce great intelligence based on open sources versus call them exquisite or special or whatever word you want to use for that? Is that different or the same? Or?
I think it's complementary. Back in, I think it was 2015, when I had the honor of leading the open source enterprise, one of my bosses talked about some mission partners we had. And this was right on the heels of what's called a modernization or a reorg. And my boss conveyed the story about how one of our mission partners said, hey, the best thing about this reorg is that you guys invented open source intelligence. No, that was not the case. Open source goes back to pre-World War II, Foreign Broadcast Information Service, FBIS, yeah. when the Axis was using disinformation. How about that? And needed to better understand that. So we had folks around the world reading newspapers, listening to radio, and providing more context. And so it's been around since World War II, but 2015, key mission partners said, hey, you guys invented open source intelligence. That perception was there because we value secrets so much. Yeah, if you can't sneak somewhere and take it out from under somebody's nose without them realizing it, it couldn't be of value. So it's been around for decades, generations, I guess, and now we realize the value of it. But it touches on that so much information. There's so much there. Is all of it necessary to provide the context to make the informed decisions? But I'm just heartened because open source intelligence is now a valued ent across the intelligence
community. Took a while, but
yes.
That's good. So taking from intelligence and thinking about the OECD, where the threat landscape ends up being very important, you're obviously working on policy that shapes the country and arguably the world's view of cybersecurity. I think the whole world looks to the United States, and not in every way, but in many, many different ways around what we're doing. So if you would have to say, like, what is the current view of the cyber threat landscape from an OECD point of view? How would you sort of summarize that? If you anything particular that stands out that would be controversial or different, or?
Well, we did actually summarize the threat landscape in the 2024 Cybersecurity Posture Report. One of the things that Congress did was give us a statutory requirement to have an annual report on the cybersecurity posture of our nation. And we rolled that out this summer. Nothing about the strategic environment will surprise this group. The key things, it's interconnected. That's only going to become more so. It's complex. It's only going to become more so. And it's competitive. And that's not going to change either. So interconnected, complex, and competitive. That's the strategic environment that we live, work, and play in. But the threat trends that we noted, number one, the increasing attacks on our critical infrastructure. That's number one. And I was pleased that in January, when we had the honor of testifying in front of a House subcommittee, FBI Director Wray announced that day that the team of cybersecurity partners had just taken down a Chinese obfuscation network that was on America's critical infrastructure, placed our critical infrastructure at unacceptable risk. That trend's not gonna change. That adversary was on our critical infrastructure, not for traditional espionage purposes. And again, this room ought to know, understand, and appreciate that nations spy. Fact of life. We got to deal with that. But this was not about traditional espionage. It was not about financial gain. It was about
destruction.
To disable and destroy America's ability to mobilize if the current competitive phase transitions into crisis and then even worse, conflict. So attacks on critical infrastructure is going to stay. We need to adjust. The second threat trend that we noticed was was increase in cybercrime to include ransomware. And just pleased with what you all are doing on that front. And ransomware doubled in the last year. We have to use all tools in our nation's and our allies' toolkit to combat cybercrime and ransomware. And I'll come back to that. And the third challenging threat trend is an ever-increasing and ever-complex supply chain for cybersecurity. And I spoke to a group, the National Governors Association, roughly a month ago, and that was a day or so after pagers and walkie-talkies were exploding in the Middle East. And I said, yes, that was kinetic, and we all see the impact at the moment of the exploitation. Imagine on the supply chain side for cybersecurity. We, in all likelihood, we would not have the visual impact at that moment, but we should never rest easy on that. And we have to take supply chain security seriously early and throughout the process. The fourth trend that we noted was the availability of commercial spyware. Again, previously that had been the domain of nation-state espionage agencies. Now any of us can procure via various means spyware and use it for our own desires, good or bad. Bad. Yeah. And then the last trend that has to be balanced, and we talked about it, you talked about it earlier, we'll talk about it later and throughout the day. Artificial intelligence, challenges and opportunities, just like there has been with almost every revolutionary technology. The big difference in this case is that I think it's the first technology of that scope that's in the hands of individuals. That doesn't, so the opportunities and challenges there. Some folks want to run away from it, which is the wrong thing to do, because it's not going away.
Nope.
Others want to embrace it, which is what I recommend, and which is what this administration wants to recommend. But while we're embracing it, we understand we need to manage it as well. Oftentimes, folks will say, key components of artificial intelligence are computing power, the algorithms, and the language models with the data. I add in there, a key part has to be values. We have to input values along with compute power and algorithms and the large language models. And AI is an area where the federal government has to have a strong partnership with the private sector. Cybersecurity is an area where we have a strong partnership, but in particular AI.
It was great. It's very good. And it's interesting because you say critical infrastructure, which obviously people have talked about critical infrastructure in cyber for 20 years, but that add-on of the anonymization, China using anonymization networks, and we started seeing China and the Indian power grid back in 21 or 20, or then slowly working them way to where they're doing it in this sort of more devious sort of way in the U.S.
Yes.
It's not good. And it has no good purpose.
I agree, and that's a point that we consistently make to our allies. This is not a U.S. problem. Oftentimes, some of our allies will say that's a Western problem, that's a capitalism problem, that's America's challenge. Well, no, this is a global challenge, and no one should think that they can't be touched or that they're not touched already.
So given that we're going to be speaking so much about ransomware here today, and ransomware is sort of like feels like there's, I don't know, Georgia knot here. There's like an intellectual sort of issue here where we're more or less in conflict with Russia, where all the guys who are doing this stuff to us, and the interest of Putin and down of actually prosecuting his sort of the ransomware guys is very little. He's probably pretty even happy to see it going on. And then at the same time, here we are still connected to these guys on the same internet. Is there a policy that you can help shape that can actually go at that? Or are we sort of at a place where it's just going to continue? I don't know. Is there a policy that can be helpful there?
Yes, and yes, because it's going to continue, but there are some policies that are in place, some strategies that are in place, and initiatives. I think it was just last week that our colleagues at the National Security Council hosted a counter-ransomware initiative here in Washington. It was the fourth one that we've had, and it's up to 68 nations participating. in that counter-ransomware initiative. Why? Again, because it touches all of us. In concert with that counter-ransomware initiative, we're pleased that U.S. Department of State Cyber and Diplomacy Policy team, led by Ambassador Nate Fick, also has a strategy that talks about digital solidarity. It talks about international norms. It talks about no safe havens for cyber criminals. Strategy is sound, but how do like-minded nations work to deter not just the cyber criminals, but those that shepherd the criminals to no longer be a part of the ransomware schemes that they're a part of right now by allowing safe haven, as you mentioned. So those things are in place. We still have to work via that counter-ransomware initiative, work with digital solidarity, and we have to leverage every tool in our nation's bag to deter, again, the cyber criminals and those that harbor them. And that includes a lot of tools, and we need to use them all.
Good, good. So switching gears on and getting pretty technical, so getting to your computer science degree here, but I know the ONCD has had some pretty interesting policy approaches around BGP and memory safety and getting into the quote-unquote weeds of computing. So do you want to talk a little bit about those and what you guys are trying to do there?
Yes.
I was impressed that you guys it goes from sort of policy here into...
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've been delighted with our office. Nothing I can take credit for. They were doing this well before my tenure. But it's a diverse team from perspectives and skill sets. And it's unique that a White House policy office has the technical expertise that we do have from an engineering perspective. Other offices have it, but we also have cyber and economics in addition to this computer science skill set that's behind a report that we issued earlier this year called Building Blocks. But on the Border Gateway Protocol, I think we all know the internet was built decades ago not with security in mind. It was built for convenience and communications, not secure communications. And we've known, again, for decades.
Survival from nuclear bombing.
Yes. And we've known for decades that the foundation of today's internet is not secure. It's not. And Border Gateway Protocol, RPKI, it's a means of, it's an addressing scheme for bulk internet traffic. And I have to say, what we are doing right now on the BGP side, we realize it's not the panacea. It is a step to help us become more secure, and that's what it is. But it will help mitigate some of the hijacking of bulk internet traffic.
Which is very dangerous.
It is, and we have seen instances where internet traffic was to be sent from a location in the domestic U.S. to another location in the domestic U.S., and it made a detour across the Pacific and came back for not for efficiency or redundancy reasons. So we need to continue to work this Border Gateway Protocol. That's one area that we're working, and we're doing that in concert with the private sector, academia, civil society, and our allies. This is an area where the federal government needs to pick up the pace. We are behind in registering our IP space. Europe is, the number I've read is there's something like 70%, and the U.S. We're under 40%. So the federal government is taking that on. We're going to lead by example and move forward on implementing BGP, and then we have a
that's a super interesting point.
Yeah, it is, and I've just told,
and where you can have direct impact.
Yes,
you own the network, arguably.
Yeah. We need our network operators in partnership with us, and that's what we have. We actually stood up a group, private and public sector partners, that that are taking a look at the next steps after this BGP RPKI. And that's one of the points of emphasis for us. We realize that there's a lot of good ideas in a lot of different places, and so we get out and listen and learn, and then we lead via action and collaboration. Another area that you mentioned was memory safety, memory safe programming languages, software metrology. But on the memory safe programming languages, it's commonly known that some of those languages are less challenging to exploit.
And you're telling us we can't use Python when we build Good Future?
Well, I'll tell you, I was at a different service academy earlier this year, talking to a young cadet there, and I asked that cadet if they had read the building blocks report that we put out on that included, amongst other things, memory safe programming languages, and the cadet said no, and so I kind of explained to him, why we need to do memory safe programming languages, and I enumerated some and then some not so safe programming languages, and he said, hey, but those other ones are so easy to use. I said, precisely my point. I said, but by the way, what are you going to do when you get your commission? And the answer was, be a cyber officer. I said, okay, well, you'll understand soon enough.
Yeah, I know.
But that's one of the things that we need to continue to work on. Too often, entities, both individuals and collectives, view cybersecurity as an inconvenience. It's an imperative. Flat out, it is an imperative. The quality of life, again, how we live, work, and play, is on this digital foundation that we need to make as secure as possible, and we need to make as many folks understand that that digital foundation underpins virtually every aspect of our lives today, and then we need to prioritize it. I was at a session yesterday, a troubling session. There's challenges all around, and it was clear that resources are going to be required to address it, to mitigate some of the challenges. Resources are tough to come by, and my perspective was it's not merely a matter of resources, it's a matter of prioritization. Whatever weapon system you have, it's got to have cybersecurity. Otherwise, it's like having a beautiful car in the garage, but we're not going to give you the keys. All you can do is look at it. You don't even know if it works. So
Some people do that. But.
I agree. But cybersecurity has to be a priority.
Yeah, totally.
Just one final question, because I think we're coming up on time here. So going back to AI, and it's sort of fascinating how the United States have obviously been able to get in pole position here in a pretty incredible fashion, and basically based on a small set of companies out in Silicon Valley. And no, I don't want to say free of regulation, but arguably being able to run very fast. And then we have competitors in China, which are certainly trying to catch up in all kinds of different ways. We, through policy, have tried to say, stopping semiconductor equipment getting to the Chinese, so, trying to get in the way there. EU is sort of regulating themselves out of being able to compete in AI in many different ways. In my book, maybe there's others who wouldn't agree. But so now you also said, though, we got to also make sure that values are part of AI. We know that China, at least officially, has said that any Chinese AI has to embody socialist values. I assume you're not going to go there. So, but how do we figure out how we sort of, it's a really difficult part, because I agree, AI is going to be so profoundly part of our lives, so it can't just be a machine that can go anywhere, because it's going to go bad places fast. So how do we figure that out?
I think you said it's not going to be easy. I'm in agreement, and we have to do it together. Just one aspect of that, and AI has been around for a while, but I've often pondered, given some of my jobs in the government at various agencies, how far we will leverage AI. We've seen some of our competitors use AI to the point of decisions, kinetic-based decisions. I don't know I don't know that the United States will go that far because of our values. And it could be a case, I don't know, of going from manual typewriter to electric typewriter. Some people say, no, I just can't do it.
I think targeting is going to be automated, but all right.
But that's a challenge for us. You know, how much of that serious decision space will we take the person out of the loop? Will a commander actually, say that machine did it, but still realize who is accountable? Because we can let that machine exercise its algorithms and come up with a decision, but that's not a space where a commander cannot delegate accountability. That's a challenge there.
That's good. Director, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And Godspeed in your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.